he went to prison, during which time he could seek drug treatment. And all of the information that we were provided at that time by his counsel and through Mr. Harris was that he didn't have a drug addiction problem.
I remember that. But it wasn't made compulsory during the 20.
No, it wasn't. And usually if somebody doesn't have a demonstrated drug addiction problem, it's not made compulsory.
But his record his criminal record showed that it was a lot of drugs in his past. Would you say?
Right.
Right.
But there was a period of 2 years, for example, before this incident, that he was clean for that entire 2-year period and wasn't using drugs then. I mean, certainly I think it appears that he would benefit from some drug counseling. I think that act the other day was a further reflection of that, and so that wouldn't be inconsistent with the person that we've come to be familiar with. But again, there still has to be accountability for a violation of the law, and particularly in this instance where part of the plea arrangement that we had reached with him, a very important part, was that he was to serve as a role model. He was to really be the government's ambassador, to go out and to speak to kids, to be spreading the message that it's important to obey the law and not to use drugs and not to be involved with guns and violence. And I think we all know that that message is substantially diluted when you say one thing and do another.
But isn't that something that's typical for someone who has an addiction?
It may very well be typical of someone who has an addiction, but just because someone has an addiction, that doesn't mean that there aren't consequences for violating the law. And particularly where someone has voluntarily entered into an agreement where they're going to serve as a role model, where they're going to be out preaching the message that it's important to obey the law and not to use drugs and not be involved in violence. There's, as one of the witnesses for Mr. Harris talked about today, there's a thing called personal accountability.